do we have enough time to begin voter education? What role do you want the political parties to play now going to that election?
Well, there's still time. The elections will be on the 9th of March. Today is 25th of February. We clearly have around about 2 weeks within which to have this election. And there's a lot that can happen within 2 weeks. Whether the political parties have incorporated this into their plans is what I don't know. But it's a long time within which they can continue with political education, particularly that gubernatorial and House of Assembly elections are a lot closer to the people. These are positions that are much closer to the people than the president, National Assembly, Senate and House of Representatives. So I think political parties at that state level now have a window of opportunity to speak to the issues that are of specific interest to the respective states. So the various political parties, the campaign councils of the various political parties in each of the states now has an opportunity, or now have the opportunity, to address the issues that might be of interest to the voting public in the respective states. But again, I need to point out that most times people decide already, even before the elections come, which political parties or which candidates they're going to vote for anyway. So while I advocate that the political parties go back to the drawing board and incorporate some form of political education into the remaining days, there are also those who have already made up their minds, and there will be very little that the political parties can do to change their minds.
Mike, trust me, we've got another very important point to raise here, and that has to do with overvoting.
Yes.
When you talk of undervoting, that's understandable. But here, what seems surprising to me is overvoting.
Yeah.
When we have the list of INEC pasted on the wall at various polling units, how can we explain? How do you reconcile overvoting?
Well, it's possible that in some polling units, the smart card reader machines were not used to accredit. And because of that, you had persons who maybe have come to the polling units either without smart card readers, without their permanent voters cards, or have come with them but have not been part of the accreditation process or something like that. Or persons who, for one reason or the other, have circumvented the process.
Do you think INEC can explain this?
Maybe, especially now that technology is part of the electoral process, INEC might be able to explain why we have this kind of situation.
Okay, let's quickly talk about the Senatorial and National Assembly elections now. You are aware very well, some of the sitting senators would not return. And even outgoing governors, some of them would not they're not able to secure the seats. Do you see any change in paradigm in the political arena? How do you explain it when you've been in office for like 8 years and then just to try your hands in one third of your state and then it came out this way?
It's not a new, really, particularly in some states. In 2015, then outgoing Governor Gabriel Suswam aspired to be the senator for Zone A, or what we call the Northeast Senatorial District of Benue. He lost. But he has, unofficially, from the feelers we're getting, it does appear he has won this time around. So it's not strange. You make a valid point when you say you have been governor of a whole state and then one part of it you're not able to deliver and all of that. But it also goes to show that the Nigerian electorate is increasingly becoming a bit sophisticated. Sophisticated in the sense that they're able to say, well, we will not reward you for doing what is wrong. You were in office for 4 years or for 8 years and we expected certain things to happen and they didn't happen. So we will not give you a second chance. It's also the bandwagon political effect. Bandwagon in the sense that sometimes political parties fall out of favor with the generality of the Nigerian public, in a particular state or generally, and that has an effect on the political fortunes or the electoral fortunes.
You think we'll see how that bandwagon effect as these results are coming out?
I think so. I think so. I think there is that bandwagon effect.
Because you won't be surprised when you see in a particular state APC is winning, is leading presidential, and then when it comes to senatorial or House of Reps elections, the other party is winning that.
Exactly. And I'm trying very hard not to be specific in the examples I use to illustrate the point, because officially the results have not been announced. The case of Benue, but from the few local governments that have been announced, I think the APC presidential candidate is leading, but at the same time, the 3 senatorial districts seem to have all voted in favor of the PDP. So this is one case in point. If actually what the feelers were getting are anything to go by, Yeah. So I mean, and it's not just there. Kwara, I think, is another example, slightly different from the scenario you played out, because here is a Senate president, someone who has been governor of the state for 8 years, someone who comes from a family with a long-established political history and all of that. But you can see what has happened, And again, if the feelers we're getting are anything to go by, I hear the Senate president has been gracious enough to call his opponent and to congratulate him. I don't know whether this is true, but I've seen feelers, particularly on social media, So maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I mean, you don't take social media very seriously on issues such as this.
Okay, Mike Usaha has been in the studio in Abuja with me, doing a very great job talking to these issues we have on ground. Very soon, we have Professor Kabiru, a professor of political science from Kaduna Zone and Network Center, joining us. And from what I can see on our screen here, the National Collation Center is still getting set. Professor Mahmoud Yakubu earlier told us that they will reconvene at 10. This is just a few minutes past 10, and we're expecting that they come up very soon. And now we have Professor Kabiru on the screen. Professor Kabiru, can you hear us? Good evening.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
This evening. Professor Kabiru, can you hear me again?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Very well. Thanks for joining us. Can you tell us how the atmosphere is like in Kaduna at the moment?
Well, in Kaduna, the atmosphere is peaceful. The elections were conducted, under a very peaceful atmosphere, like I did say. Except for the few challenges regarding the distribution of election materials to not just, polling stations outside of the metropolis, but even within the metropolis. So I think the elections generally were fair because, even those areas where the materials did not arrive in good time did arrive eventually. And though voting commenced rather lately, at the end of the day, there were no major incidences recorded in terms of either violence or distortion of the electoral process. And of course, as at when due, results were counted, or ballots were counted, and subsequently results announced. And as I'm sure you must have seen, official declarations have been made in few areas. For instance, Kaduna North Senatorial District, result was done officially by INEC, and even in Zone 3, that's the Kaduna South Senatorial District. Also, results were officially announced by INEC. So in Kaduna, it's been very peaceful, not for the fact that, of course, you notice certain problems that are very fundamental. One of the problems, of course, is that in a certain section of the state, several, voting points actually did cast their votes without honestly adhering to the directive that there must be the use of card readers. So I think that's basically the problem, and I do believe that INEC in Kaduna is working seriously to ensure that all such areas are being detected and the results therefore put to question and necessary actions are taken. But on a whole, I think the process in Kaduna has been very peaceful. There was no incidence of any violence, any disruption, and this perhaps has to do with the fact that adequate arrangements were made. And one fundamental fact that I think Nigerians need to know now is that citizens themselves have decided to own up, to take over, the management of the electoral processes, even where the security agencies, are lacking. Yes, we have seen that in several places here in the state. A lot of the security forces, especially, but the decision of citizens to make sure that they own the process, they take the process a matter of seriousness, in this case prevailed by the very fact that they were able to conduct themselves orderly and make sure that there was no any major disruption that will, affect the results. So in a nutshell, the major issue here is that there are places in the countryside where the deployment of card readers actually, or the use of card readers became, a problem. And of course, we are coming from a tradition where in several polling stations, elections were not conducted, and what was the rule was few political elites will aggregate themselves and begin to, write results, and at the end of the day, conform to the very common Nigerian nouns of politicians that will say, declare me first, and then anybody who is not happy with the declaration should go to court. But I think really, like I said, INEC should be able to look inward to make sure that all such places where card readers were not put to use, especially here in Kaduna State, where I know are being interrogated with a view to taking the right decision, so that the sanctity of the electoral process is therefore severely or appropriately protected.
This is still one leg of the 2019 general election. I'm sure we're still coming to issues of moving forward ahead before the governorship and state houses of assembly elections. But now we're seeing the fifth general election in Nigeria. This is the fifth presidential election. We've had elections in 1999, 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015, and now 2019. If you want to see this trajectory, if you want to see this development, would you say we're moving any step forward at all, talking about the electoral process now?
Obviously, we are making progress, even if, slowly. One will say very comfortably that the level of consciousness, especially on the part of citizens, has tremendously increased from what we saw in 2015. Yes, the incrementality of whatever progress we may be making may not be so appreciable to a certain chunk of the society. But the fact of the matter is that we are making progress. Even if, like I did say, slowly, the bottom line is that Nigerians now, that a lot of us previously expected, were not informed about the essence of democracy, and especially electoral democracy, are really coming home with the fact that, people, I'm saying by implication, are getting the realization that they have the capacity to decide who represent them at various levels of government. Now, in that case, it's very clear that one fact, that has been of tremendous achievement or attainment is the fact that citizens now know that they have the capacity to come out and decide who represents them at what level and at what time. And this basically underlies, the concept of Western liberalism, Western liberal democracy, where people decide, who their representatives should be at any given time. And if we measure it against this backdrop, it is therefore rational to assume that we have made substantial progress from the time we started doing elections in 1999. That's given this dispensation. Yes, of course, people will argue that the elections in 1999 were more credible than the one that followed it in 2003, because the one in 1999 was more or less organized by the military, and therefore the vested political interest of unholy manipulations was to some extent drastically reduced. In 2003, it was a colossal failure. In 2007, it was also a replication of what happened in 2003 because of the desperation of those who were spending 2 terms in office and are leaving, and therefore the uncertainties of what was going to follow. In 2011, it was also another major disaster because we realized that there was one election in this country that resulted in the termination of several lives and destruction of a lot of property. In 2015, as a result of this, progressive development that we experienced, Nigerians first and foremost, came to the realization that with the deployment of card readers and other, incentives put in place by the Independent National Commission, a large, volume of success was recorded. And the expectation is that, of course, 2019 will be better than 2015. And I want to think that apart from the fact that the data that is apparently rolling in suggests that voter turnout is still a major problem in the Nigerian democratic process, the process with which INEC has conducted the 2019 elections, by and large, has, been advancement, a development from what we have in 2019. And of course, I do believe also as a student of political science that evolution within the electoral process is one of the fundamental, landmarks of successes that any particular political entity achieves. And I think, therefore, that the Nigerian nation is making progress, even if it is slowly, in terms of the way and manner that we recruit our leadership, and that is the electoral process. So I am thinking that 2019 election is certainly a better election than the election that was conducted in 2015. And I want to think also that by the time we get this right and we correct all those mistakes and lapses that were identified in 2015, the 2023 election is obviously going to be a little bit. And I have been around reading through the comments of local and international observers, and all that I hear is that Nigerians are being congratulated for the manner in which they conducted themselves during these elections. Of course, the problems in certain areas is one of those things that are teething that we will continue to grapple with until we get to such a time when all those areas, and let me tell you as a student of political history, one of the major problems in Nigeria is that there were certain sections of this country or certain constituencies in Nigeria where previously elections were never conducted. So even the citizens in these areas were never concerned or worried whenever elections came, because they knew that whether they went out to vote or they didn't go out to vote, at the end of the day, decided results will be released, and then people, that the ruling class or those at the upper echelon of the society desired to have as representatives were those who represented them. That is changing fast in this country, and I think that's a very serious progress that every Nigerian should, harp on and try to see how we can build on it in order to be able to sanctify the electoral process to the extent that at any point in time an election is conducted, as long as the ground rules are very clear, as long as all processes that are supposed to be put in place are put appropriately in the right places, those who win will accept that they won fairly and squarely, and those that will lose will also own up to the fact that they have lost the election, and if they're interested, they could wait another time and present themselves to the public for another. So, in a nutshell, I'm saying.
Thank you for your perspective in that regard. Now, Prof, can you hear me? Okay, Prof. Now, thank you for your perspective to today's evolution of democracy or development of democracy since its return in 1999. Now, you have spoken to the fact that we're making progress. Nigeria is making progress when it comes to democracy. Now, in this year alone, just in 2 days, a couple of lives have been lost. Talking about young Nigerians now, core members who are supposed to be part of the future of this country because of one thing or the other. And again, despite the warning before this election by the president, talking about advice against Nigerians, to Nigerians against election violations, electoral violations, snatching of ballot boxes, we still have some of these cases coming up. What do you say to this fact?
Nigeria is a nation of, about 180 million people estimated, and INEC told us recently that about 72 to 73 million Nigerians actually collected their permanent voters' cards and therefore eligible to participate in this process. It is the largest voter in Africa. And one of the largest, of course, in the world. You do not expect that you will have such a very wide exercise taking place, on the same day in perhaps, over such a large expanse of land to go unnoticed without one or two crises. Like I did say, of course, there are certain parts. Let me take you back history lane. Sometimes in the electoral history of this country, there were certain parts of the country that were identified as violent. For instance, in the First Republic, the western part of the country was defined as the Wild Wild West. Today, it's not the Wild Wild West. Again, if you take, for instance, the South-South, what we call South-South today, history has it that several times in the past, elections were never conducted in the southern part of, in the South-South part of this country. At the end of the day, results were released, and then, of course, leaders were foisted on the community to the extent that citizens of these parts of the country became so contented with that scenario and accepted whatever came their way. Now, this is partly responsible for the over-monetization and excessive intervention in the political or the electoral process in this country within the certain parts of this country. So, we don't expect that as it is today. Yes, of course, violence were reported in rivers, in Delta, etc., etc. But if you take out this, spot crisis or crisis of, crisis, where areas where you had this crisis and you isolate them and put them within the context of the general Nigerian electoral map, you realize that substantial progress has been achieved. And I'm very hopeful that as long as, let me give you an example. If you take Rivers State, for instance, by now, in 2015, Rivers State had submitted results leading to millions of votes, or thousands or hundreds of thousands of votes as going to one political party. But the way we see the results coming from this part of the country, and especially Rivers State, trickling in, despite the crises, the loss of lives, the arson, the murder, that's taking place in this particular state, you realize that substantial progress has been achieved to the extent that you see the level of rapportage, the way the results are trickling in, do not seem to suggest that all such violations that were part of the history of the electoral processes in this part of the country are still being kept. So I'm very hopeful that we'll have to make do with the reality that we find ourselves, or we find on ground now, while trying to correct all those minor and major problems, with the hope that in the next 1 or 2 elections, all these issues will become matters of history. So I'm saying, of course, that you don't expect that you hold election where 72 million people are the voters. In a country where you have 36 states and a federal capital territory, a corrugated, geographical landscape, etc., and at the end of the day, you don't record any such incidents. As regrettable as these incidents are, I want to believe that we are making substantial progress. And INEC, of course, elections in all parts of the world are determined. The peacefulness or otherwise of an election is always determined by the nature, the character, and the various and general infrastructure that the electoral agency is able to put in place. And I'm saying that in this case, INEC is incrementally making progress in identifying these problems. And I think what needs to be done now is really to work on the mentality of the Nigerian politicians who apparently seem to be desperados and are not ready to accept anything that is coming from the people. And of course, yes, election or politics is war, but it's not war with bloodshed, as Chairman Mao will say. It is war without bloodshed. So what we must do is really to continue to propagate the virtues of accepting the will of the people. Every person that is seeking to be elected as a representative, a leader of a people, must at the same time be willing to subordinate his or herself to the wills and caprices of those who are the electorate. And that's what Western liberal democracy is all about. I think that we have made progress. I think we are making progress. And I hope by the time we get to 2023, or not even 2023, by the time we get to elections in the next 2 weeks, in all this crisis where this violence, erupted, we should be able to see some substantial reduction in this violence so that the lives and the sanctity of lives of the Nigerians will be respected by those who are willing or wishing to.
Thank you very much for your perspective. I'm sure we'll still come to you in our Kaduna Zonal Network studio, Professor Kabir. Now, let me quickly come to Mike Otsaha here. Prof talked about working on the mentality of Nigerians, average Nigerians, who some of whom are actually dying at the expense of those who are not even aware of these efforts for them. What do you say to this?
Well, I will start with his reference to politicians and the fact that they bring in a certain level of desperation in their aspiration for office. We've said this a number of times, and I'm happy he mentioned the election of 2011, which, resulted in the deaths of young people, including youth corpers and all of that. I think to continue to make the argument that we need for politicians to become a little bit more responsible is, we're belaboring the point, really. We need to see effective law enforcement. Can the law take its course? Can we see a situation, for instance, where if someone has been found, culpable in perpetrating electoral violence, then that such a person should be made to pay for it, whether directly or indirectly through others. And this is the only way that, the deterrent effect will be seen. A situation where we simply appeal to politicians to become responsive and responsible in their conduct of political affairs and all of that. It has not worked. These appeals will not work until we see a situation where there is a deliberate act on part of law enforcement agencies to bring certain persons to book. Even if it is just to point the fact that, we don't have sacred cows.
Mike, you're talking about now the security agencies coming out to prosecute these offenders.
Yes.
Now, but in this same country we've been hearing of cases whereby political thugs will be arrested, and then what you get is just a call. Please release that boy for me. So who should we be talking to at this moment now? Is it the security agencies or the political class?
I think the law enforcement agencies will really be my focus in this case. I was excited when Mr. President said, the security apparatus, particularly the military, the police, and other law enforcement agencies are at liberty to activate their processes towards getting people to conduct themselves in a particular way. And I thought that was an opportunity for them to take advantage of, you know. And until we begin to see effective law enforcement, we begin to see people actually prosecuted and put behind bars or made to serve some form of punishment, we will continue to see pockets of violence here and there. I'm not quite aware of anybody who since 1999 has been brought to justice on account of their conduct during elections and all of that. Period. And this is some kind of subtle encouragement for bad behavior. We've talked about the need for politicians to be statesmen. We've talked about the need for politicians to put the interests of the country first when they aspire to office. Apparently, this is not working. These appeals are not working. And I think the only language that the average Nigerian, including the political class, understands is the language of law enforcement. And we need to see a little bit of that stepped up.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. Just let's remind you that in a moment, we'll be returning to the National Collation Center at the International Conference Center, Abuja, where we have Professor Mahmoud Yakubu and his team rolling out the results from various states. Now, let's quickly return to Professor Kabir Manto in our Kaduna Zona Network studio. Prof, Mike just talked about strengthening the security agencies to deal with these offenders of during political events like this, like elections. Is it not a two-way thing? We have someone perpetrating this, we have someone carrying this out, and we have someone who is sponsoring this. So how do we deal with this situation? We have someone who is trying to sponsor thugs, some political thugs, to carry out this act for them. So how do we deal with this issue? It's a two-way thing. I know you understand.
Yes, it's a two-way thing, but I don't want to put, the whole thing on the doorstep of the security agencies. I think, democracy is entirely about attitude. The populace must, in the first instance, internalize the virtues of democracy as fundamentally built on, the threshold of, everybody conceding or agreeing. That's even the genesis of the modern state system that we have. The social contract theory that people talk about, where we surrender our liberty, our independence to a selected few that we call a state. Once the right attitude to democracy is not there, we will continue to face issues. And I'm a proponent of the fact that if Nigeria will have 180 million police force, that's each citizen having a policeman or a policewoman by his or her side, and once the right tune of attitude is not there, we will continue to experience very serious flaws in the way we run our lives. Criminality will be there, etc., etc. I think this is an issue that has to do squarely with the political class. This is an issue that has to do with people who aspire to represent us at various levels of political authority. Political authority in this country is not due. In those days, you call them youth wing when you're doing elections, and then immediately you win election or you lose election, their name immediately changes to political thugs. So deliberately, and there are quite a lot of politicians in this country that put aside large sums of resources in order to fund the drugs and other, intoxicants that make these young people behave in antisocial manners whenever elections are conducted. So it's not an issue that has to do with the low security agencies. It is an issue that has to do more with the capacity, the ability, and the willingness of the Nigerian politician to do what he's supposed to do, or what he's supposed to do. We don't have to continue. And of course, like several political leaders have said in this country, we set aside money for drugs and other intoxicants that set other people's children on the street, to do our bidding when our children are not just in our own homes, they are in school either far away from where we live or even outside of this country. So it is the attitudinal dimension of it that needs to be severely worked on so that politicians themselves, look, the Political Offences Commission that the Justice Always panel did recommend, and which of course the government of Umaru Musa Yar'Adua saw as unnecessary to take before the National Assembly, and which is now before the National Assembly, but the National Assembly is foot dragging on it because most of the members of the National Assembly are actually beneficiaries or sponsors of this very massive and social behavior of our young people. So we must work on the character, on the ability of our political class and the elites within the society to ensure that we take politics not as a matter of life and death, we take politics not as a zero-sum game. You know, one of the issues, you know, Justice Uwe's panel, for instance, spoke about was the need to bring about the question of proportion.
Professor Kebe, we'll return to you in just a moment. You can be sure when you have a professor of political science, you always be schooled very well. Let's quickly go to our Lagos Zonal Network Center where we have Bayo Adewusi to make some input to this discussion we've been having. In just a moment as well, we'll be returning to the National Collation Center, ICC, here in Abuja. But Bayo, good to see you again. What do you have for us this time around?
Good to see you. Welcome to the Lagos Network Center. Results of the concluded presidential elections, as you know, have been announced from the National Collation Center in Abuja. Results from Ekiti, Osun, Kwara, Nasarawa, the FCT, Ondo, Kogi, Gombe, Abia have already been made public. One new expression that has caught my attention is overvoting, and our in-house analyst, Dr. Segun Bolarinwa of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, NIIA, will walk us through this concept. But first, some reports. Senator Oluremi Tinubu of the All Progressive
the requirements of the law and scored the highest number of votes is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
Professor Elijah Oyeyemi gave a summary of the result in the 5 local government areas of the Central Senatorial District, with a total vote cast as 239,057. It disclosed that the APC candidate pulled a total of 131,725 votes, while the People Democratic Party's candidate had 89,107 votes. Although Oluremi Tinubu was absent at the venue of the announcement, representatives of the APC jubilated on her behalf.
She will continue to serve the people of Lagos Central. She will continue to attract development. She will continue to attract federal presence to this senatorial district.
We want to sincerely thank the people of Lagos Central for the support they have been giving us so far.
Improvement in the disposition of the goodies of democracy to the citizens of Nigeria, particularly Lagos, is just the expectation.
The proclamation of the verdict was witnessed by local government chairmen within the senatorial district, agents from the various political parties, and security operatives. In Lagos, Rotimi Oluwagbemi, NTA News.
Thank you, Rotimi, for that report. Dr. Bolarinwa, what is overvoting? This has hit me for the first time, really. The concept of overvoting, what is that?
Well, overvoting simply talks about a situation whereby those who came to vote or the results of the ballots cast is seen to be more than those who have either registered or collected their PVCs or even voted. For example, if 1 million people was announced to have collected their PVCs, so it is expected that 1 million votes would have been cast.
Maximum.
Yes, maximum. But when they are returning results of more than 1 million, 1-point-something million.
Yes, but
then
how
it
can
becomes overvoting.
How can that happen if you followed due process? There's the card reader, there are other forms of verification. You have to do all of that before you cast your vote. Are those votes, those extra votes, coming from somewhere else?
Yes. If you follow due process, if you use the card reader machines, if you do those accreditations and all of that, the case of overvoting will not arise. But overvoting comes in when you bypass the whole due process as stipulated by INEC, do your accreditation, vote simultaneously, present your card, let the card reader vet your card, then you are giving the ballot paper to cast your ballot. If all of that is done, the case of overvoting will not arise. But it arises when you go behind and do some illegalities, or you have jumped the whole process of legalities or whatever they have put in place for due process to be done. Then it becomes overvoting when those who actually voted, or the register of those who are expected to vote maximum, and the vote they brought is more than that.
How do you know who voted genuinely and who came in through the back door?
Well, that would be the forensic checking. That would be a long process if such issue arises. To be a long process, they will have to bring the ballot papers which people had used to cast their votes. Then they will marry it with what the machine has and discover, and try to verify if the person who voted was actually a genuine voter or somebody who is eligible to vote.
But what they have done is just voided those votes.
Yes,
is that indirectly disenfranchising a lot of Nigerians?
No, don't think that way, sir. Because it is an electoral fraud when you are bringing a result which is more than even the number of people that are expected to vote. Clearly, it's an obvious electoral fraud. So the next line of action, the rule says that result of that particular either polling unit, either a local government, either a ward, either even a state should be cancelled or nullified.
Does that not suggest that the elections were not as smooth as we seem to believe?
The election was as smooth. All of these are part of the itches wherever we may find general elections or anything. Only that it is always very more in this part of the world. Every election all over the world has its own itches. So it's expected, but it should be minimal. It should be minimal. For example, we have only had it on few occasions in this current election. It was rampant, like somebody said earlier at the Abuja studio. It was rampant in 2015. Results that came in from Delta, from Rivers, even some parts of the state or country, a lot of overvotings were recorded. But you don't have to overlook them because the whole polity was overheated at that particular time. No. Unlike now, things are even a little bit calm, normal, and following due process.
Yes, but I hope some people do not disrupt the process, because I heard earlier in the day that some political parties are already registering their displeasure that the results that are being announced are not what really went down.
They cannot truncate the process. Those political parties coming out are preempting their defeat or their failure. They should wait till the end of the whole process when INEC will announce the final result. The rule says only INEC has the mandate, the power, the authority to announce the result of these general elections. So please, whichever or any political party that is trying to go and preempt and do a press conference, they are trying to jeopardize a process of free, fair, and credible election, which the EU and some other international observers had alleged and alluded to that it's credible, though there are also
some
pockets of which is not too bad, because elections all over the world, even American elections, have its own issues, which is still being investigated up till now. Look at what is happening over issue of only Brexit. They are still fighting over the election, the referendum. So it happens all over the world. Look at German election that brought in Merkel now. They have not even constituted a very government, all-inclusive government now. They are still fighting, negotiating, and it's over a year now. The same thing in Italy. So electoral violence or some issues during general elections like this cannot be overemphasized. They're actually something that will always come up. All we always try to do is to put up modalities that will reduce some of these problems and issues as they are happening now. But in all fairness, the system, the government, the INEC, the way things have been done so far in these 2019 general elections, in all fairness, other than the violence or pocket of violence, it's been okay so far. It's been okay. Look at the way they've been collating and announcing the result. It's been so glaring. It's been so transparent. So
okay,
please.
But let us quickly remind ourselves that we have another set of elections coming on in less than 2 weeks' time. Are there any lessons? What is the takeaway from this process that would help make the next elections a better procedure, a better process?
A lot of things. One of it is that other than this step they have taken so far so good, we should learn that in the next elections we are waiting, the governorship and the state assemblies, electoral materials, INEC officials should get to the polling booths early, because unlike this one, like the one we observed on Saturday, we discovered that even as early as 6:30, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., the electorates were already at the polling booths waiting for INEC, waiting for INEC officials, waiting for materials and all of that. Of course, those materials arrived safe and sound, and people went about exercising their voting rights and all of that. So, but they should make sure in the next election, people, the logistics, all electoral materials, INEC officials get to the voting centers earlier. If it is possible, they should get there even before the electorate. That is one. Two, there should be more presence of security agencies now, particularly in those hot spots.
I was just going to come to that.
Thank you, sir. Particularly in those hot spots where we have recorded some violence and some skirmishes of itches and all of that. So let there be adequate presence, more than it happened for the presidential election. More, then that will also send a signal or a message to the spines of would-be thugs that will come and disrupt or destabilize.
But Nigerians have complained in the past that the presence of either armed or uniformed men should be discouraged, and that's what INEC picked a leaf from to
have done it in that right way, which is okay. But on the other hand, now they can now see that what we should now preach is not the presence of these security agencies and all of that. It's not their presence that is intimidating now, but they should be neutral. They should be neutral in the subsequent elections and all of that. So while we are saying security agencies should be neutral, but why they are neutral, we need their presence
Dr.
now.
Bolarin, let me quickly
because of these issues.
Let me quickly take a story. With the highly anticipated presidential elections over, police in Lagos State say the entire process was peaceful. Ruth Ario Samuel spoke with the police Force Public Relations Officer Zone 2 Command and filed this report.
Violence, crisis, and lots of mayhem. However, the just concluded presidential and National Assembly elections was different in Lagos State, and where there was minimal disruptions of the process, it was brought under control.
On Saturday, the election day, we were able to get about 27 suspects, which they were trying to foment trouble, and the eagle eye of the operatives were able to, get them on time, and they are under investigation.
The PPRO Zone 2, Dolapo Badmos, advised Lagosians to go about their lawful businesses, as the police will not relent in ensuring that mischief makers are handled according to the law.
Lagos and Ogun is free for each and everybody to live and do legitimate business. So as long as your business is legitimate, be rest assured that nothing untoward will happen to you. We are on top of the situation.
While commending Lagosians for their peaceful conduct, the police has assured the public of its readiness to safeguard lives and property in the state. In Lagos, Ruth Ario Samuel, NTA News.
Thank you very much for that story, Ruth. Let's get back to the elections. collation is going on now, results are being announced. That suggests to me, because of this complaint by some political party, it gives me the idea that all is not over with voting, that you can still be untoward during the collation process and the final announcement. How can we ensure that we have a better, more inclusive process?
Well, I think maybe in the future, because since it's part of the electoral laws that at the polling units, at the ward level, results at those points should be announced to those who had cast their votes. So while they are announcing that, they should also give power at the state level, if not at the local government level. For example, immediately they have collated all wards, all units, all wards, all local governments at the state level, even for presidential, not only for governorship or any other one. The INEC should be mandated to announce instantly instead of waiting for the transit from the states to Abuja again. And probably those are the places where those things are happening or whatever, if at all they happened.
Okay. But the situation we're going to have at the next election is this. It's a local matter. We're dealing with the local INEC. It's not going to Abuja.
Of course,
they will announce the results
at the state
here
level.
in Lagos or whatever the state.
At the state level.
Yes. Is that more prone to corruption?
Probably. I cannot say. But, you know, at that
with
level...
your experience as an observer...
Yes, my experience as an observer is that...
nationally and internationally...
Yes, it's always, at times, very turbulent. And if not, in most cases, the whole processes are thwarted, tampered with, and all of that because it's at the state level. And anything they want will happen at that level. And then it makes it easy at the state
particularly with the ruling party.
Yes, it makes it easy if it's a ruling party that is in power. So they will know how to go about it. So in most cases, at the state level, there will be less skirmishes, there will be less issues because to a greater extent, everything will not take so long as these are taking. For example, elections were held on Saturday. We never started having anything since Sunday. Today is Monday. Collations are just still being done. It may be done all night tomorrow. So it's going to about almost a week, many days. But at the state level, at the order for governorship, for other ones at the state level, it may not be more than maximum of 48 hours or even less than 48 hours. Because once they are done...
What is your advice, sir, to the electorate in terms of vigilance, in terms of greater participation?
My advice is that let us keep our calm. Let us continue to be so patient. Let us continue to tolerate the system because things actually are still moving high and things are getting better, and surely we'll get there steadily. Surely, steadily, we'll get there, and our democracy will become a better one. But now we are still democratizing and we are improving. The whole truth is that if you compare up to 2015 and now 2019, sincerely, 2019 is a step ahead of others. And I hope in the next elections, it will be better off and Nigerians will be happy or happier in the future.
At what point in time do you think the system should begin to consider electronic voting?
Well, we are also ripe to that level. For example, they did electronic voting in Egypt. They did that in Egypt. South Africa, I can't remember so well, but to an extent, electronic voting, some people, it has been recommended earlier here, but some people at certain quarters have tried to say, no, we are not ripe, we are not this one, because all of these changing of figures, all of these allegation of rigging, all of these changing of figures or anything people are alleging or some political parties are alleging now will not happen because and even killings will be reduced. You know why? Because you don't even need to go far away to go and vote at any booth. You can you can cast your ballot on your phone
or laptop
in your house, wherever, and it will just be dropping where they are collating, and they will just announce.
Okay.
So in the future, if we accept electronic voting, it will also reduce incidences of fighting, killing, thuggery, and all of that.
You know, just before the elections began, there was a warning that Nigerians should be wary of fake dollars in circulation. What was the essence, what was the import of that announcement?
You know, to Thank you, sir. You know, in 2015, I know to many Nigerians, including myself, was a bad experience because a lot of dollars, foreign currencies, or hard currencies, as they call it in this part of the world, were in circulation. That alone, that action alone, had affected the Nigerian economy to date, which is still being regulated, being controlled, being guided. So if people start to share dollars, either original or fake again, it's another trend that will affect our economy.
Okay.
And that's why, and they also discovered some people have been trying to print fake dollars in order to do what they call vote buying. Because you think you are collecting original currencies in dollars, and you'll be so elated to say, I will do this, I will do this. Eventually, you will collect fake dollars, you go and cast your ballot or your vote. At the end of the day, you are robbed on both sides.
Okay, that leads us to the next story. Nigerians are imploring government to come up with policies to strengthen the purchasing power of the naira against foreign currencies. Amaka Owo went around town and reports that business activities are gradually picking up after the elections.
Trading activities are back to normal in most areas of Lagos metropolis after the just concluded elections. This is one of the strategic markets in Lagos where you have thousands of traders who display their goods. Some move around the market while others have stalls. NTA crew observed that petty traders display their goods along the streets. For instance, food vendors and those who are into transportation are back to business after a few days of low business activity owing to the elections.
Many people are still indoors to know what will be the outcome after the result. So it has a little effect on a daily business. We must not deny that fact.
Meanwhile, some areas known for vibrant business activities recorded low turnout.
So
the market is counting.
So what do you expect in the next few days?
I believe in the next few days, the market will pick up.
However, some Nigerians believe that the growth and survival of businesses across the country is dependent on commitment and being focused.
If everybody has integrity in whatever they do, it will transform around the whole economy, and our economy will definitely be better for it.
We shouldn't be giant of Africa in name only. We should be able to also accelerate this development and leverage on the gains of our democratic experience.
Traders and manufacturers, they need our forests to be favorable to them, because you must have foreign exchange to survive in any business today in Nigeria.
The respondents also expressed optimism that the outcome of the elections will usher in a new dawn for the Nigerian economy. In Lagos, Amaka Owo, NTA News.
Thank you very much, Amaka, for that report. In summary, you know, she said business activities are just picking up, or a lot of other activities are just picking up, which leads me to the question, and I want you to be very brief and fast about it. Why does everything go on lockdown when we have elections?
Well, it's a general thing around this part of the world. You can see some of these field observations made now. So it's people are always apprehensive, they are full of fears, there's tension everywhere. So people are always emphasizing if we go out during voting or we go out to vote, the violence can break out, this can happen. And you know, where violence breaks out, marketplaces, people's markets become the first targets. In fact, they will be picking up things in shops and all of that. So that's why traditionally in this part of the world in Nigeria,
so how do we
elections are put on
mindset?
weekends,
Yes.
And they restrict movement within certain hours. But this mindset is, I wouldn't know, it's governments in the nearest future that can say, okay, let's start holding elections during the week, let business activities be going. For example, in Ghana, in Mali, last time that we observed, it was a Tuesday. People were doing their business. They were still voting. Nothing happened. The same thing in Senegal since 2 days ago now, yesterday and today. They've been voting. People are going about their businesses. And so maybe over time, we'll get there. But because Nigeria is overpopulated, that's another reason, maybe.
Has a large population. Yes. It's not overpopulated.
No, I mean, yes, it has a large population. I don't mean in a negative way. So Nigeria is so populated. We have a large population that we may not be able to manage swing movements, spontaneous movement, anytime anything breaks out.
Well,
so
thank you very much.
One of the
thank you very much,
yes,
Dr. Bolarinwa, for your thoughts we can only hope and pray that the whole electoral process gets better with the passing of every day.
By the grace of God.
Abuja, thank you for your time. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Bayo Adewusi, for your contribution. It's been so fantastic, and of course, your guest in there. We appreciate you. Just to remind you that in a moment, we're expecting our studio at the International Conference Center to signal to us, and we'll join them for the continuation or presentation of two more states. Okay, now I can see they're about getting set for the next set of presentation from three more states across the country. But let's just remind you that you can always be part of this discussion via various social media platforms, talking about Twitter at NTA News Now, youtube.com/NTA News Online, and on Instagram at NTA Network News, facebook.com/NTA Network News. You can always join us to be part of a discussion on your tabs and mobile phones. I have in the studio joining me again, of course, I still have Mike Utsaha in the studio, and I have Professor Kabiru Mato in our Kaduna Zona Network Center, and I have joining me veteran Cyril Stober in the studio. Good to have you back here.
Well, thank you, most well.
All right, let's continue with you, Mike. We're talking about electronic voting now. Are we getting any close to that? Having in mind that we have some Nigerians in diaspora. Okay, I understand they are set for us at the National Collation Center, that's ICC, where Professor Mahmoud Yakubu is set to continue with the proceedings now.
Honorable Madam, Resident Electoral Commissioner, INEC, Enugu State.
My state of assignment is Enugu State. In Enugu State, there are 17 local government areas. I was appointed to serve as Enugu State Collection Officer. And in Enugu State, there are 17 local government areas. Number of registered voters in Enugu State, 1935168. Number of accredited voters, 452765. Votes scored by parties. Party A, 45. Party A, 45. AA, 31. AA, 31. AAC, 219. AAC, 219. AAP, 109. AAP, 109. ABP, 30. ABP, 30. 172. SCPN 80. SCPN 80. ADC 348. ADC 348. ADP 137. ADP 137. AGA 82. AGA 82. AGAP 79. AGAP 79. ANDP 27. ANDP 27. ANN 141. ANN 141. ANP 24. AMP 24. ANRP 14. ANRP 14. APA 422. APA 422. APC 54423. APC 54423. APDA 302. APDA 302. APGA 1618. APGA 1618. APM 20. APM 20. APP 50. APP 50. ASD 29. ASD 29. AUN 4. AUN 4. BNPP 15. BNPP 15. CAP 10. CAP 10. CC 49. CC 49. CMP 21. CMP 21. DA 33. DA 33. DPC 97. DPC 97. DPP 360. DPP 360. Fresh 63. Fresh 63. FJP 68. FJP 68. JDPN 715. JDPN 715. JPN 71. JPN 71, HJP 16, HJP 16, ID 13, ID 13, JMPP 24, JMPP 24, KP 27, KP 27, LM 10, LM 10, LP 27, LP 27, MAJA 22, MAJA 22, MMN 48, MMN 48, MPN 41, MPN 41, NSC 40, NSC 40, NCMP 20, NCMP 20, NCP 24, NCP 24, NDCP 12, NDCP 12, NDLP 35, NDLP 35, NEPP 11, NEPP 11, NFG 52, NFG 52, NIP 40, NIP 40, NNPP 50, NNPP 50, MPC 83, MPC 83, NRM 68, NRM 68, NUP 92, NUP 92, PCP 2337, PCP 2337, BDP 355553, BDP 355553, PPA 373, PPA 373, PPC 129, PPC 129, PPN 56, PPN 56, PT 36, PT 36, RAP 37, RAP 37, RBMP 20, RBMP 20, RP 21, RP 21, SDP 130, SDP 130, SNC 141, SNC 141, SMP 34. SMP 34. UDP 43. UDP 43. UP 19. UP 19. UPN 22. UPN 22. WTPN 10. WTPN 10. YES 11. YES 11. YPP 1379. YPP 1379. Total valid votes 421014. 421014. Rejected votes 30049. 30049. Total votes cast 451063. 451063. Mr. Chairman, there were some cancellations in 2 local governments, specifically in 3 polling units in Enugu East and 1 polling unit in Oji River. And I've completed the prescribed form to that effect.
Can you tell us the figures for each of the 2 polling units and the total?
Yes, sir. Enugu is for the 3 polling units, total is 2,665, 2,665. Oji River, the only polling unit, is 245, giving a total of 2,910, 2,910.
Thank you very much. Scope for Enugu. Please step forward and submit the original results and report. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Is the scope for Ebonyi State ready?
No, Mr. Chairman, it's not quite ready. And it will take about 20 minutes. Plateau is they're not ready either.
Okay. Well, we'll wait until we take Ebonyi. If it's going to be in how many minutes?
20 to 30 minutes.
20 to 30 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll not take another break. We'll wait. If it's 20 to 30 minutes, we must take Ebonyi since they are there. Or any other state?
Yes,
Secretariat?
Plateau has arrived, but they are yet to be checked.
Okay, Plateau has arrived, so we'll take Ebonyi, we'll take Plateau. Any other state? Somebody wants to make a comment?
Mr. Chairman, honorable commissioners, good day to every one of you. My fellow colleagues, good day to everyone. I want to make a comment.
Your name, sir? And
my name
party
is Comrade Noah John Abiodun. I represent Progressive People's Alliance. Based on the last 10 results that we have read out, I discover a similar problem to them all. And as a student who has practiced some element of statistics, and I know you are all professors, I came to understand that there are voters not accounted for in all the states. I developed a formula which I called TVC equals to TVV plus TRV. I will explain. Now, the TVC stands for total vote cast. And to get the total vote cast, you will need to know the total valid vote plus total rejected vote. And if you do that, it is supposed to come to the same figure as the total vote cast, which must rhyme. Now, for us to know the voters not accounted for, there is a formula which I call TAV, which stands for total accredited voters minus TVC, which is total vote cast. When you do that, you will discover voters not accounted for. And these voters, like in Nasarawa State, we have 14,321 voters not accounted for. And these voters are not among those that were cancelled. Mr. Chairman, when you say accreditation and voting is simultaneous, it means these voters were at the polling units and they voted. Now, in Kogi State, we have 17,277, according to my formula, not accounted for. In Abia State, we have 17,090 not accounted for. Mr. Chairman, I want to believe that these voters who have not been accounted for could have made a great difference in the results that we've been having. That is my comment, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Comrade Biodun of the PPA. I think the point was made earlier by other party agents without any complicated formula. And the commission said that we'll look into it, we'll come back to it before we finally conclude on the process. So I've taken note of your formula, plus the simple presentation by party agents earlier. We'll come back to this before we conclude the process. Thank you. Yes, I can see another hand. Thank you. Can we give him the microphone?
Usman Bugaja representing the PDP. Chairman, sir, I was wondering if mine is just a request, if it would be possible to have the back-end data from your server on the accreditation from the card readers. This, I think, will increase transparency, and it will also enhance the confidence. And this should be made available to all political parties so that we can all be able to assert exactly what discrepancies might be there. Thank you very much.
Okay, noted. Is Ebony ready now? I'm trying to hurry Ebony up. Okay.
Is the NTA Nigeria decides to do within the National Coalition Center here in Abuja. My name is Muhammad Kudu Abubakar, and if you're following us, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, in his capacity as Chief Returning Officer for the 2019 presidential election, has been receiving collated results from all the states of the Federation. So far, almost 10 states, including the Federal Capital Territory, have come here at the Coalition Center, registered their collated votes from the states with the Secretariat of the Coalition Center, and formally announced the votes cast and the scores recorded for all the 73 political parties that fielded presidential candidates. The very latest ones that the National Coalition Center just received are from Abia, Yobe, and Enugu states. The coalition officer for Abia State, Professor Chinedun Nwajuba, Vice Chancellor, Federal University of Ndukani, announced that total number of registered voters in Abia State were 1,793,861. Total number of registered voters stood at 361,561. He thereafter announced that the APC scored 85,058 votes, ABGA 9,638, while the PDP scored 219,698 votes. Total valid votes in Abia State stood at 323,291 votes. Total rejected votes were 21,180. Total votes cast stood at 314,471. Professor Nwajuba announced that council votes range across 7 local government areas in a total of 98 polling units, and the votes, total registered voters affected by this cancellation were 59,825. For Yobe State, the coalition officer is Professor Abubakar Musa, Vice Chancellor, Federal University of Wukari in Taraba State. He announced that total number of registered voters in Yobe State stood at 1,365,913, and number of accredited voters was 601,069. He thereafter went ahead to announce votes recorded for all the 73 political parties that fielded presidential candidates. But notably, 3 major political parties, APC scored 497,914, ABGA 226, and PDP 50,763. Total votes cast in Yobe State stood at 559,365, and total rejected votes were 226,772. Total votes cast stood at 586,137. Professor Musa thereafter also explained that there was a Boko Haram attack in Gaidam, one of the local government areas in Yobe State, and this, he said, delayed elections in that area. But he announced that later, when the situation became calm, later in the afternoon, elections were held, and which reflected the votes he announced. Several other polling units votes were cancelled, and this affected a total of 4,447 voters. Thereafter, the National Coalition Center received the results with respect to the presidential election in Enugu State. The coalition officer, who is the vice chancellor of the Enugu State Anambra State University, announced that total registered voters in Enugu stood at 1,935,168, and total accredited voters in Enugu State were 452,765. Votes scored by political parties were thereafter announced, but majorly we had APC recording 54,423, ABGA 1,618, and PDP 355,553. Total valid votes for Enugu State stood at 421,014 votes, and total rejected votes were 30,049. Total votes cast stood at 451,063. Results or votes cast in 3 polling units within 2 local government areas were cancelled. The coalition officer announced that this affected a total number of 5,575 voters. So all in all, we have had results for the presidential elections from Kwara State, Ekiti State, Osun State, Ondo State, Nasarawa State, Kwara State, Enugu State, Yobe State, Abia State, and of course the Federal Capital Territory. So far, we have the Coalition Center is having a little break, waiting for results from Ebonyi State. We are told the coalition officer for Ebonyi is waiting in the wings. Probably his results have been fed into the Secretariat of the National Coalition Center. Let me very quickly now hand you over to our Nigeria Design Studio at the NTA headquarters for a little analysis of the results announced and released so far at the National Coalition Center. Well, it appears our colleagues in the studio, the engineers, are going to link us up with the Coalition Center. But like I said, we are here in the studio within the National Coalition Center, and waiting for the coalition officer for Ebonyi State, who is the next in line to bring his results. We are told he is right now, giving his figures to the Secretariat, because I announced to you earlier that first they normally feed their figures to the Secretariat, who will then now, the figures are normally given to the Secretariat in PDF form, soft copy, so that they can be projected on the screen and graphically illustrated. It appears our NTA studios and Nigeria Decides studios at the headquarters of the NTA are ready to do the analysis. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Mohammed Kudu Abubakar, in our Nigeria Decide studio right there at the International Conference Center. That's the National Collation Center in Abuja. Thanks. Where we just got the results of Enugu State, where we had majorly, let's talk about the two top parties. That's APC, 54,423 votes, while PDP that won the state with 355,553, now making it 10 states and the Federal Capital Territory. That's 11 now in all. Back in the studio here with Mike Utsaha and then Serious Toba in our Abuja, Nigeria Decide studio. We are coming to this issue again. What we got from Enugu State, you hear one political party scoring for in a particular state. What does that mean to you?
It's not surprising. I mean, Enugu has always been a PDP state, I would say. The current governor and most of the members of the state assembly are members of the People's Democratic Party. So this is not surprising, you know. And particularly the fact that the vice presidential candidate of the PDP also comes from the southeastern part of Nigeria. This was to be expected. It's no surprise really that the result has turned out the way it has.
All right, as announced by the chairman, INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, they are still expecting results from Ebonyi and Plateau states. They are crossing the T's and dotting the I's that we can see from our screen here. Any moment from now, we'll return to the National Collation Center to rejoin them. But serious Toba.
Right. Osba, just as we await the next presentation from the National Collation Center, I still just want to draw attention to something so many Nigerians have talked about. Making the process of elections, collation, and release of results less cumbersome.
Yes.
And they've talked about electronic voting. Do you think that this can come on board within a short time? And given the size of this country, results are likely to take a long time before they come in. What's your impression about adopting e-voting to hasten the process?
Going forward, it's the way to go. Let me put it that way. But there are huge logistical obstacles that we might face in the process of.
Just a moment. Let us let you know that we see how Professor Kabiru Mato in our Kaduna Zonal Network Center, and will be joining us any moment again.
Yes.
You can go on.
So there are logistical issues that we must take into consideration. Infrastructure is at a low level. Some communities or even city centers are not easily accessible, you know. And then you have the huge question of the power with which you should, you know, facilitate the smooth transmission of results and all of that. So there are questions that we must critically think through before we adopt this process. And I'm quite sure if and when we decide on this process, the legislature will factor all these processes into consideration. The logistical considerations, infrastructure, even trust issues. To what extent have our politicians, reached the level of trusting institutions like INEC with such a process? These are questions that we must think through very clearly.
I'd like to put the same question to Professor Kabir Matu in our Kaduna Center. Prof, if you can hear me, we're talking about a process that will speed up the issue of elections, collation of results, release of results, and all that. And we're thinking about how to go, where to go in the future, e-voting. And while you address that, factor in the issue of the cost of elections, the shutting down virtually of the entire nation every time there is an election of this nature, and the huge man hours lost.
Thank you very much, Cyril. Let me start by attempting to address the issue of economic considerations as far as locking up everywhere is concerned when elections are conducted. I think this is about the fifth elections in the series, fifth successive election that Nigeria has had in its history from 1960 to date. And like I did say earlier on, we have recorded some tremendous progress in several areas. And of course, one of the areas that the electoral agency and those stakeholders should look into in the immediate future is, of course, the possibilities of doing election, not necessarily on a weekend, but when people are working, you can stagger it as is done elsewhere in order to be able to allow economic activity and other interactions to take place. So I believe that's a matter of time. That's something that we collectively will have to think about with a view to seeing how we will address it. The electronic voting issue, as far as I'm concerned, is something that is very feasible and very practicable. In Kaduna, when we had our local government elections in May 2018, we deployed the use of electronic voting machine. Yes, it was very successful. It is the easiest way to vote. Of course, I also do agree with the fact that there are certain fundamental issues that need to be addressed. For instance, it is easier and faster for you to vote with an electronic machine than going through the card reader and all these, sort of problems. But I think one of the things that needs to be improved and which we will have to try to do in our own situation is that the voting machine itself must be able to have the capacity to recognize fingerprints to the extent that one does not vote more than twice. But I'd like to say that it has happened here. We have done it. It's relatively very, very successful. I participated in it. It was faster, it was easier, it was smoother. But one of the fundamental issues, like I did say, is that one has the capacity to vote over and over again. So if the machines could be configured in such a way that if you vote once in one polling area, your fingerprints will be captured and you will not be able to vote in any other machine in another polling station, I think we'll be making tremendous headway. The issue of logistics in terms of the corrugated nature of the Nigerian landscape, we are talking about fundamentally infrastructure such as electricity, etc., etc. The machines are such configured in a way that when you charge them, they take a very long. They have batteries, and they take a very long 24 hours, for instance, that you could use, and there is no way within our electoral framework that one votes for, or the voting period extends beyond a maximum of 12, 13 hours or so. So it is feasible, it is possible. What is wrong with us as a nation is that there is this always fear of the unknown. Sometimes, you will be in a dungeon and the way out of that dungeon is for you to be able to agree to do something differently. But the fact that it is unknown, that different thing that you need to do to get yourself out of trouble is what you do not know. You're already used to the circumstances that you find yourself in, makes you or prohibits you from taking that bold decision. I am saying with all sorts of sincerity and honesty that INEC should come to Kaduna to be able to learn, learn from the local independent state electoral commission, hear how that entire process was carried out, and the degree of successes and the challenges for it to be able to do. The political class itself is complicit. It's complicit in the sense that several Nigerian politicians do not desire a situation where the electoral process will be free, fair, and credible because of the need, to do the Nigerian factor. And that's why I'm talking about one of the major challenges that this process has faced is the failure to use card readers in several polling stations in the countryside. And if that is actually not challenged, of course, it will have the propensity and capacity.
Prof, yes, it's one of the challenges that's been faced here. We recall that Mike, while commenting on the issue of electronic voting, also raised a fundamental issue, which you have in a way alluded to, the matter of trust and credibility. Now, even though you have not gone that way yet, you have a manual system, and trust is still, a major challenge, right, Mike?
It is a major challenge, and it goes back politicians, our political class being responsive and responsible citizens that puts the nation's interests first. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. It will require a lot, including law enforcement, like I mentioned before, and all of that. But INEC as an institution, and even other institutions that have a role to play in our political process or in our electoral process, have to raise their trust quotient. They must do things in a way that politicians, Nigerians, government officials, anybody who is part of the electoral process will trust the agencies to be able to discharge their responsibilities credibly. It's not something that is going to happen overnight, and it's not something that we're going to sit down and wish for,
Okay, while we expect INEC to work on that and see how feasible it will be in future elections, let's return to Professor Kabir Mato in our Kaduna Zone Network studio. We just had the result from Enugu State, and the prof there spent more than 30 minutes to reel out the result from that part of the country. Because of the fact that we have a number of political parties on the spreadsheet, on the results sheets, how do we get over this in the coming elections?
Well, you see, the Nigerian Constitution allows for freedom of association. I think that's one of the fundamental challenges that we are facing as a system. In those days, at least in the Second Republic and some parts of this republic, there were definite restrictions that were put in place by INEC restricting the number of political parties that will be registered. I mean, the Supreme Court of Nigeria did, annul that and said every, individual or groups have the, the constitutional support to associate and, pursue their political aspirations. But I think what's very inherent and what's very important is that there is a need for, the National Assembly, for that matter, to come up with enabling legislations or allow the Independent National Electoral Commission put up certain referral measures in place to ensure that, the election was so cumbersome, over 70 political parties, and you are dealing with a society where the literacy level is very low, even if, the political consciousness is high. It was so difficult, and I think Nigerians really need to be celebrated for having passed through this process. And the presidential ballot, was the longest, was the largest. It has, over 70-something political parties on it. And yet, today, votes have been counted and results are being released initially. And I think what needs to be done, therefore, by implication, is that there must be a strategy of weeding out these, with all sense of humility, kiosk political parties that come about and parade themselves as, political parties together. Unless we are able to do that. And people try to put up a lot of examples with the advanced capitalist social formation where you have multiples of political parties. But in a lot of these systems, most of these political parties actually aspire to seek for political mandates within particular levels of political authority, not to go to the level of seeking to be elected as president. This makes it really very cumbersome. That is one particular reason. I keep saying one of the major issues that we face as a nation and as a system is that we do not have the right attitudes and mind to pursue these political issues with the necessary seriousness that they require or that they desire. We are consistently selfish and arrogantly, unwilling, to accept whatever. As long as a politician will not wish to subordinate his or herself to the wishes and aspirations of the electorate, then democracy is under severe stress. And I think that still exists as the problem that we face as a nation. I do not see a situation where that politicians will begin to prepare grounds to refuse to accept the result of an election even before the election is conducted. It does happen only in third world capitalist social formations like Nigeria, and a lot of people. So in our scenario, it becomes morally and politically acceptable that so long as it is the candidate that I love that is winning the election, no matter how bad or poor the process is, how untransparent, the methodology of getting there is, I don't give a hoot, I don't give a damn about it. That's strictly and purely an attitudinal issue. So one of our major issues is that we should be able to devote substantial portion of our resources in conscientizing the Nigerian populace, especially the elites, that desire to manipulate the citizenry at every given opportunity for their selfish desires. Otherwise, I don't find any problem if Enugu has over 1.5 million people, 1.3 million registered voters, and at the end of the day, about 500,000 accredited for election, and it takes 3-4 days for you to be able to get that result. When other states like Lagos that have over 5 million voters will be able to get their results ready within 24 to 48 hours. So you see, this boils down to the issue of attitude. And we're not even specific about topography here. If you're talking about topography here, yes, Enugu is not as corrugated as Lagos State is, and yet that result is almost ready. In Kano, in Kaduna, and several other places where even if the results are not yet official, at least they are there being speculated, and yet you find states that are very, short in terms of, they are very small in terms of landmass, in terms of voter strength, and so on and so forth. That squarely rests on the issue of attitude. It's not about the methodology of conducting election.
Fine,
it's not about,
Prof. Something I'm picking out from what you're saying, Prof. Something I'm picking out. You talked about the political elites, and that's where I like us to go to next. Talking about the political elite and their attempts, as you put it, to manipulate the system. But if you look at it, and some would say to you, the elites don't take part in the process of voting. As we look at the results from across the country, you find that in highbrow or so-called highbrow areas, the political elite, the elites in the system, they don't come out, they don't queue. Usually it is the people or the ones you'd rather refer to as the mass. They are the ones, even if you have a low turnout, the percentage of the people who turn out is usually very high.
Yes.
The bigwigs stay home. They don't take part in the process, they don't queue, but they try to manipulate the system. How do you begin to talk of your political development in a situation like this?
Well, Cyril, what has happened this year in particular is we have seen huge movements from city centers to remote locations for voting. A good number of people who either hold offices in Abuja or some other city centers are moving to their localities to cast their ballots. They have registered at their very local communities to be able to be part of the communities when voting starts. So it's possible that we have not seen, quote unquote, the political elite show their faces maybe in Abuja or some other city centers precisely because of this reason. The president, for instance, had to go back to Katsina in Daura to be able to vote. The candidate of the PDP, the same thing, and a number of other persons did.
Yes, but these are mostly those who you could call stakeholders in the party system.
Yes.
People who hold offices in parties that are contesting. Now I'm talking about the, if you like, use the word, the ordinary voter who wants to vote for a party. And you see, when you look at the queues, you don't even see, as they say, the big boys queuing.
Well, I think we have seen a number of them. I mean, NTA, for instance, covered a good number of people who were on the queue. I saw the governor of Kaduna State on the queue.
You're still talking about
stakeholders. These are stakeholders.
They know
in the
they
party
have to
system.
take the lead for people to follow. We're talking about the ordinary Nigerian who are well-to-do, and then you don't get to see them at polling units.
Oh, maybe we have not seen them in the way we expect, but between 2015 and 2019, I think there has been a substantial improvement in terms of consciousness and the willingness to participate in the political process. Like Prof said earlier on, for the first time, we have slightly over 70 million Nigerians have registered to participate in this election. A lot of PVCs have not been collected. That's there, but at least we have not seen 70 million persons who are ready and willing to be part of the political process. And this, to my mind, will include, the so-called ordinary Nigerian. Look at, the question of the quality of candidates that we have in the political parties this time around. The so-called ordinary Nigerian, I totally agree with Prof when he says we must do something to, reduce the number of political parties that ultimately present themselves for election, particularly at the national level. But at the same time, we're seeing people who ordinarily would not associate with any political backgrounds. They're showing up themselves and asking to be allowed to be part of the political process in this country. That for me is an indication that we're gradually beginning to get to the point where we aspire to as a nation.
All right, let me put it this way. Have as many political parties as you wish. Have 150, 200, 300, 500, with a caveat. You do not get on the ballot except you have fulfilled certain conditions. What do you have against that? What do you have against that?
Well, you see, that's actually what used to exist in the Nigerian situation. Like I did say, but it was overruled by the Supreme Court of this country. You were not to be registered as a political party, for instance, until you have offices in about 2/3 of this country and meet up to certain requirements. The court says that's unconstitutional because you are denying, that basic privilege and rights that citizens have to associate with one another. I am saying in the ideal political setting, there is nothing wrong with a political party aspiring to contest and win a councillorship election in a particular local government area, or a political party desiring to focus itself within a particular local government area or a state. The scenario that we face as a nation today, which is a disaster to our political evolution, is when you have 73 or 74 political parties on a presidential ballot. I am saying that there must be an immediate strategy in place that will weed out all this. Everybody, for God's sake, in this country knows that we are functionally a two-party state. Functionally a two-party state in the sense that the major contestants in this whole political arrangement, the APC and the PDP. Yes, to some extent you talk about Abuja and you talk about so many other, somebody told me that he listened to a quiz sometimes in the last week and very enlightened people were asked to name 10 political parties in this country, and about 80 to 90% could not mention more than 3 or 4 political parties. It tells you the futility in this exercise. And I tell you, Cyril, that have been part of the evolution of the political party system in this country under the International Foundation for Electoral System. We brought up the idea of IPAC in the first place under International Republican Institute and NDI and the rest of them. And, and so it has become a visible area of trade on the unsuspecting Nigerian political aspirant to use political party formation and contest as an avenue of extortion or deriving some material benefits, from the larger political parties. And that's why on eve of elections, few weeks to elections, few days to elections, you have so many of these political parties that previously did indicate that they were contesting, coming together, form alliances and say, we have stepped down or we are stopped, we are supporting this particular candidate. I mean, this, is one particular thing that you not find in most of these political systems where you have, that's the idea of, that's the concept of, multipartyism, under
Good.
the...
As we recognize that factor, that few
theory.
weeks...
But what we have...
As we recognize that factor, that few weeks or even days to elections, some of those parties now step up and say, look, we are conceding, we are adopting. How do you now respond to suggestions that it is even sometimes the bigger, so-called bigger parties who float these smaller parties as an alternative platform to fall back on when there are issues, and that sometimes they deliberately set up these parties to draw attention away from certain things, and that's why you find on the eve of elections, well, if you set up a proxy, then it does follow that the proxy would now concede to you.
We have seen this, Cyril, particularly in the build-up to the 2011 election also. We had issues with political parties actually ending up in court in terms of who owns particular acronyms, or something like that. I think we saw this either in 2011. We saw this very clearly. But back to what Prof is saying about the fundamental right to freedom of association. Yes, there is a constitutional right to freedom of association, but I'm not quite sure there is a constitutional right to participate in the political process, to be on the ballot. This is not a fundamental right. And like he rightly pointed out, we must have very clear criteria that will qualify a political party or a candidate to be on the ballot. I think this is an area that we can, again, creatively think through and put up a set of criteria. If you don't cross this threshold, or if you don't fulfill these conditions, then there will be no need to place you on the ballot paper. Believe me, I voted in this election and I had a challenge having to deal with, the process of selecting the party that I want.
As educated as you are.
Exactly. So I'm just wondering what the local community folks were able to do and all of that. And in some cases, really, people had to call in for help to identify where they wanted to vote and all of that, So it's something we really need to think through. Yes, the Constitution says you have a freedom of association and all of that, but beyond that, without circumventing the constitutional process, we can put together a set of criteria that allows you to get onto the ballot. And if you don't meet that criteria, it becomes impossible for you to be on the ballot.
Okay, let's just remind you, our viewer, that you can always join us via our social media platform anywhere you are on the go, just on Twitter at NTA News Now and youtube.com/NTA News Online, Instagram at NTA Network, and on Facebook, facebook.com/NTA Network News. Let's just remind you again that we're expecting the National Collation Center, the International Conference Center, Abuja. We're still expecting results from Ebonyi and Plateau State as announced by the INEC chairman. Those results have been put together, and any moment from now we'll rejoin them. Now, let's return to Professor Kabir Mato in Kaduna State. Now, we have state elections, talking about gubernatorial and then state houses of assembly elections coming up in 2 weeks. 2 weeks' time, less than that actually. What are the advices you have, pieces of advice that you have for proper planning towards this election coming now?
Well, thank you very much. I think from the takeaway from the presidential and national assembly elections really revealed the fact that there is a need for INEC to be more efficient in the area of distribution of election materials. I did say that in Kaduna, not even to talk about the countryside, but within Kaduna metropolis, we've had incidences where election materials are not delivered at polling units until noon and sometimes even afternoon. This really is very dangerous, especially in those areas where you have large, voters ready to cast to participate in the process. And the implication of that was that there was a lot of suspicion and tension unnecessarily created. I understand that the logistical issues that INEC, and the rest of them are facing. That's one. INEC has to redouble its efforts. Or you'll find, for instance, a voting station, a voting point, a voting unit, a polling unit where you have about 10, 12, or 13, voting points. And, you find 2, 3, 4, 5 card readers not working. You have to keep, people have to keep making contact with INEC and so on and so forth. I appreciate that this process is evolutionary and we will have to continue to contend with the challenges. But the bottom line is that a lot of people tend to suspect that INEC is deliberately denying certain areas or certain, parts of, the voting community of these materials in order to satisfy, in electoral contests like several other contests, it is not over until it is over. So one is that the Independent National Electoral Commission itself needs to redouble its efforts in Kaduna. We've seen a lot of issues. We've seen a lot of challenges, especially in densely populated areas. That is one. And secondly, also, there must be the deployment of necessary technology and, guidelines to ensure that in any polling unit, because the tradition has always been that polling stations in the countryside are avenues of electoral manipulation by those who have,
Thank you very much, Professor Kabir Mato. At this point, we need to put you on hold. Probably will come to you subsequently. Let's return to the ICC, where the National Collation Center is for the continuation of presentation of results from Ebonyi and Plateau State.
In Ebonyi State. And we have the total number of registered voters is 1392931. 1392931. The total number of accredited voters is 391747. 391747. And here are the votes scored by each of the 73 parties. A, 23. AA, 27. A, 23. AA, 27. AA, 27. AAC, 205. AAC, 205. AAP, 116. AAP, 116. ABP, 31. ABP, 31. ACD, 87. ACD, 87. ACP,
ACPN 57. ACPN 57. ADC 213. ADC 213. ADP 102. ADP 102. AGA 43. AGA 43. AGAP 38. AGAP 38. ANDP 47. ANDP 47. ANN 683. ANN 683. ANP 35. ANP 35. ANRP 47. ANRP 47. APA 290. APA 290. APC 90726. APC 90726. APDA 204. APDA 204. APGA 222. APGA 222. APM 33. APM 33. APP 79. APP 79. ASD 60. ASD 60. AUN 17. AUN 17. BNPP 29. BNPP 29. CAP 23. CAP 23. CC 31. CC 31. CNP 35. CNP 35. DA 35. DA 35. DPC 96. DPC 96. DPP 175. DPP 175. Fresh 54. Fresh 54. FJP 105. FJP 105. GDPN 1271. GDPN 1271. GPN 72. GPN 72. ID, sorry, HDP 30. HDP 30. ID 31. ID 31. JMPP 43. JMPP 43. KP 25. KP 25. LM 28. LM 28. LP 96. LP 9. MMN 148. MMN 148. MPN 38. MPN 38. NAC 32. NAC 32. NCMP 2. NCMP 20. NCP 55. NCP 55. NDCP 50. NDCP 50. NDLP 30. NDLP 30. NEPP 13. NEPP 13. NFD 97. NFD 97. NIP 51. NIP 51. NMPP 64. NMPP 64. NPC 155. NPC 155. NRM 95. NRM 95. NUP 108. NUP 108. PCP 1637. PCP 1637. PDP 258 573. PDP 258 573. PPA 734. PPA 734. PPC 149. PPC 149. PPN 108. PPN 108. PT 44. PT 44. RAP 100. RAP 100. RBNP 96. RBNP 96. RP 25. RP 25. SDP 452. SDP 452. SNC 293. SNC 293. SNP 48. SNP 48. UDP 26, UDP 26, UP 28, UP 28, UPN 24, UPN 24, WTPN 16, WTPN 16, YES 24, YES 24, YPP 192, YPP 192. The total valid votes 359,131. 359,131. Rejected votes 20263. 20263 rejected votes. Total votes cast 379,394. 379,394. So, Chairman, there some cancellations in some areas due to overvoting because they didn't use a smart card reader to do accreditation. So we have the forms are here. Like in Abakaliki, we have 3712. That's the total number of registered votes. The number of polling units that are involved are 3. We have Afibo North. The number of registered voters there is 1537. The polling units, 1 that are involved. For Afibo South, number of registered voters, 7420. The polling units involved, the number is 9. Ebonyi, we have number of registered voters and the polling units, 1729. Number of polling units involved, 2. Oishielu, number of registered voters there, 1729. Number of 6348, that's for Ishielu. And number of polling units involved, 7. Then for Easy, number of registered voters there, 11597. And number of polling units involved, 12. For Hauku, number of polling units, 6. And number of registered voters, 4959. For Onitsha, number of polling units involved, 9. And the number of registered voters there, 9074. Then for Ikwo, number of polling units involved, 12. And number of registered voters there is 8292. So those are the issues. The reports are here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Cope. I am sure you have the detailed report from places where election did not hold or was cancelled.
Yes.
And I also take it that you applied the regulations and guidelines in places where the card reader was deliberately circumvented.
Yes, I did.
The penalty is there in the regulations and guidelines. So we'll study the report that you bring before a final decision is taken.
Thank you very much.
Okay, on this note, please step forward to present the original results and the report. Is Plateau ready?
No, Chairman, they're not. They're not. They're still reconciling. It'll take too long.
Any other state?
No other state represented, sir.
Let me see the original first. This one. What's this? Very neat. Will you please sign your name, signature, and date? Send the stamp. Yes. No, it's not there. This stamp. Yours, name, signature. There are provisions and date. There are provisions for just sign. No, just sign here. Place it on the table here. Okay, Prof. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. All the best. Thank you. Go sweet. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jose, can you find out the Secretariat? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I learned that Plateau will require some time before it can come up to make its presentation. I think on this note, we can adjourn the collation center for today. We are going to reconvene at 10 in the morning tomorrow. We'll start with Plateau, and then we'll take perhaps all the states of the Federation tomorrow. So I wish you a nice night rest. We'll reconvene at 10 in the morning tomorrow. Good night. Or is it today? Okay. We'll see at 10 in the morning today. So I will not say good night, I will say good morning.
It's Professor Mahmoud Yakubu there already saying it's a good night for today, adjourning the collation for the presentation of results of the presidential election till 10 a.m. That's on Tuesday, tomorrow already. We have already in 12 states, that's 10 states, 11 states plus the Federal Capital Territory. And out of these states, we have 3 from Southwest. Okay, let's quickly go back to the ICC where we have Muhammad Kudu Abubakar standing by to give us some perspectives to this. Muhammad Kudu Abubakar, you're on. Kudu Abubakar, you're on. Kudu Abubakar, you're on.
The receipt of results from the states to reconvene later this morning at 10 in the morning. But before then, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu did receive the result from Ebonyi State. Professor Chukwuemeka Eze, who is the Vice Chancellor of Federal University of Owerri, announced that total votes cast in Ebonyi State stood at 379,394. Total valid votes 359,131, and total registered rejected votes stood at 20,263. And for votes cast, or rather received, by various presidential candidates, several of them were announced by the coalition officer. But notably, the APC received 90,726, ABGA 222, and PDP 258,573. Professor Chukwuemeka Eze said a total of 62 polling units results were cancelled, and this affected a total of 54,662 registered voters. All in all, so far, from early and yesterday morning, the National Coalition Center have received results from Osun, Kwara, Nasarawa, Ondo, Kogi, Gombe, Abia, Yobe, Enugu, and Ebonyi states, including the Federal Capital Territory. This brings a total of 10 states plus the Federal Capital Territory, making 11. So what the remaining now, hopefully, will come later this morning when the National Coalition Center reconvenes. We now take you back to the Nigeria Decides studio at the headquarters of the NTA for further discussions and analysis.
Thank you very much, Muhammad Kudu Abubakar, there at our Nigeria Decides studio, ICC, Abuja. Like Kudu said, we have now a result from 11 states, and then the FCT making it 12. And we have 3 states from Southwest, that's Osun, Ekiti, and Ondo, and Southeast, Abia, Enugu, and Ebonyi. North Central, Kwara, FCT, Kogi, and Nasarawa. And Northeast, we have Gombe and Yobe. No results yet from Northwest, and none from South yet. And out of this 12, APC won 7, while PDP won 5. Now, let's quickly get some final words from Mike Utsaha, who is in the studio right here with us. We have 11 states and then the FCT already.
We'll continue to appeal to Nigerians to be patient so that we see this process through. So far, it has gone on well. It's open, it's transparent, it's there for everyone to see. So we continue to appeal for patience, and yeah, that's basically.
Thank you very much. And Professor Kabir Mato in our Kaduna, your final words as we expect the continuation of presentation of results tomorrow 10 a.m. to start with Plateau.
Well, I think the most important thing is that there's a need to call on the Nigerian political establishment to subordinate themselves to the wishes and aspirations of the Nigerian electorate. A situation where political leaders will arrogate to themselves the power to make Omar, in my view, is detrimental to the progress of this country. And it will be very unfortunate for anybody, especially the statement that we heard from the chairman of the People's Democratic Party regarding the election. As everybody did say, it's a process that is honest, that is transparent, but not totally devoid of minor skirmishes that are not in themselves capable of drilling the entire process. I think Nigeria should be more important than the interest of any particular individual groups or political formations. So politicians must watch it. Nigerians, I'm sure, will not be able or will not be willing to tolerate any, desire or any wish on the part of, political leaders that will wish to bring trouble, and compound the problems of this country. So I think majority of us, as humble, law-abiding citizens of this country, part of the process. We see it transparently. We see improvement today. The Nigerian Television Authority clearly tells us, you see analysts and you see about telling you what happened in 2015 and what is happening today. So it's not right. I mean, politics is a game of numbers. They say it's a tyranny of the majority. If the majority wins, majority will always have its way and minority will have its say. So politicians, especially at the highest level of politics in this country, must be very careful. We'll hold them responsible, we'll hold them accountable in the event that they try to drag the nation into an unnecessary, tension and pressure.
Very much, Professor Kabir Mato, a professor of political science, right there in our Kaduna Zonal Network Center. And that has been it, the Nigeria Decide studio of NTA right here in Abuja. We thank you sincerely for being part of our telecast today. We join us again tomorrow where we reopen the Nigeria Decide studio for continuation of presentation of the results. I am Musbah and Wahal, thanking you a lot for joining us, and of course on behalf of the entire crew, we say thank you.
Go vote for the candidate of their choice.